Hi, my name is Mandy Nevius, and I'm a member of Tulsa Chorale. Thank you for joining me today for the third episode of our series, Beethoven and the Beatles, Celebrating the Revolutionaries. Today we'll begin by taking a close look at Beethoven's Mass in C, and then later we'll transition into a brief analysis of the Beatles' third and fourth studio albums. Let's begin by exploring the first movement of Beethoven's Mass in C, the Kyrie. The introspective and sincere Kyrie offers a heartfelt appeal for mercy. The Latin text of the Kyrie reads, Kyrie eleison, Christe eleison, Kyrie eleison, meaning, Lord have mercy, Christ have mercy, Lord have mercy. This movement features 4 SATB soloists, an SATB choir, and a subtle orchestra that omits flutes, trumpets, and timpani. Beethoven is ambiguous with his tempo marking, walking leisurely with much motion, lively, as if somewhat fast but not too much. More than tempo, Beethoven's chief concern was conveying emotion. The first section, measures 1 through 36, is firmly rooted in C major and starts with the full choir statement of Kyrie eleison, beginning with the almost inaudible, unaccompanied bass entrance. The sopranos and altos ascend and descend in 2 smooth, stepwise waves, a soothing piano for the first up, down, up higher, and then a dramatic but easy crescendo into the final down. With the sound of a hopeful plea, all voices come together in the 11th measure on the closing eleison. Following this, in measures 15 through 25, the soloists sing the same text. Just before the second section, measures 37 through 68, the music progresses through B major to set up the E major of the central text, Christe eleison. There's a stirring interplay here between the soloists and the choir that adds texture to the movement. The solo voices with minimal instrumentation lead to a rich choral and orchestral sound in only a few measures. Next comes a bridge, measures 69 through 82, that connects the E major section and the closing C major section. The text returns to Kyrie eleison. The bridge is reminiscent of the Kyrie's opening measures. The sopranos lead with a light, floating E as the tenors and basses sing a wave of notes up the scale and down. Then the altos, up and down, all come in at measure 78, building to a shocking fortissimo. The third section sounds similar to the beginning, a fervent plea from the choir followed by the soloists. At the end of this section, Beethoven alters the theme like before, again moving through B major, but this time he sets up a series of suspensions, the climax of the movement, before settling back into C major. The coda is mostly in C major, but Beethoven does weave in a surprise. Measures 117 through 122 arpeggiates the F-sharp diminished chord in a loud forte before ending in C major. The last words are sung quietly, except for a brief surge in the final eleison. Although short, the Kyrie is a stunning opening movement that showcases the depth of expression in Beethoven's entire Mass in C. Thank you for listening to this section of our video examining the Kyrie in Beethoven's Mass in C. Before we continue to talk about the Beatles' third and fourth albums, I wanted to quickly remind you of Tulsa Chorale's upcoming concert celebrating Beethoven's 250th birthday and the Beatles' 60th birthday. Our concert will take place on October 13th at the Admiral Twin Drive-In and will include a showing of Tulsa Chorale's virtual performance of the Kyrie in Gloria from Beethoven's Mass in C, a screening of the film Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, and a live performance of Beatles songs by Tulsa's own Retro Rockets. Tickets will be $20 per car and will be available at the gate or in advance online. The gate will open at 6:45 and the concert will begin at 7:30. It's going to be a fantastic evening celebrating these revolutionaries. You won't want to miss it. Now for the Beatles' third and fourth albums. On October 31st, 1963, Ed Sullivan discovered the Beatles on his trip in London while searching for potential acts for his show. He was in the airport when he saw large crowds gathering in excitement. He learned that a band called the Beatles were returning from a tour in Sweden. The hysteria Sullivan witnessed prompted him to quickly schedule the Beatles to appear on his show, which they did about 3 months later. But for a few more weeks in the fall of 1963, the Beatles remained virtually unknown in America. But that would change on December 17th. A teenager named Marcia Albert wrote to her local DJ in Washington, D.C., asking that the radio station play something by the Beatles. Disc jockey Carol James, who did not know who the Beatles were, found an import copy of I Wanna Hold Your Hand and played it on the airwaves. Listeners of WWDC went wild for the song, and it began sweeping across the nation. Just before this, Capitol Records, who had turned down the Beatles many times before, had reluctantly agreed to release the record, but only after the head of their parent company, Parlophone, told them they needed to. The record wasn't scheduled to be released until after the new year, but with the WWDC's unauthorized American release of the song and its surprising popularity, Capitol pushed the official release date up to December 26, 1963. It sold 250,000 copies in America in 3 days and over 1 million by January 10th. I Wanna Hold Your Hand was recorded on October 17th, 1963, 4 days after the Beatles' defining performance on popular variety show Sunday Night at the London Palladium. And it was the first song they recorded that used 4-track technology. The sound is simply euphoric, with the hand claps and the octave jump to the word hand, and the building excitement with each repetition of I Can't Hide, and the final punchy plea at the end. In the UK, it was released as the A-side to the slow and sad This Boy. After the Ed Sullivan Show, to which an estimated 74 million viewers tuned in, they continued their American tour by playing in the Washington Coliseum, the biggest location they had played at that point, and where the continuous screaming from the audience lasted the entire 28-minute set. They also played 2 sold-out performances at Carnegie Hall, where no rock and roll band had ever performed before. Just before returning home, they appeared on another Sullivan show, which drew the largest TV audience in history. Beatlemania had officially caught on in the U.S. On the week of April 4th, 1964, the Beatles made history by appearing in the top 5 positions of the Billboard Hot 100 chart, along with 7 other Beatles songs in the top 100, making a total of an unprecedented 12 places on the U.S. chart that week. Thus began the British invasion. 2 days after returning to London from their American tour, the Beatles recorded Long Tall Sally, I Call Your Name, Slow Down, and Matchbox for a British EP, as well as a handful of songs for their forthcoming album. They continued working on their next album alongside filming their first movie. The title for the movie came before the song. Ringo had a tendency to misuse words. The Beatles endearingly referred to the ridiculous things he said as Ringoisms. One day, the movie producer overheard Ringo talk about a late-night performance and how they had had a hard day's night that day. And the producer immediately knew that A Hard Day's Night would be the title of the movie. 10 hours after this was decided, John had written a song to go with it, his lyrics scribbled on the back of a birthday card from a fan to his son, Julian. The song A Hard Day's Night begins with a shocking, clashing chord, most prominently from George's Rickenbacker's 360 12-string guitar, that rings for 3 seconds before launching into John's commanding vocal. Paul sings the bridge as a pounding cowbell drives the beat, and the song fades out at the end with a repeating arpeggio of notes from the first chord. Also on the album is And I Love Her, one of the most touching songs the Beatles would ever record. It's a wistful melody delivered by acoustic guitar, subtle percussion, and Paul's gentle voice. George pulls off the key change from F sharp minor to G minor beautifully, keeping the otherwise simple song interesting. Paul's Can't Buy Me Love bounces with enthusiasm. It was the first of their records to to feature only one singer. Paul's lead vocal is double-tracked. The song was used twice in the film, A Hard Day's Night, perfectly matching the on-screen running, jumping, and falling down. Also appearing on side 1 is I Should Have Known Better, If I Fell, I'm Happy Just to Dance With You, and Tell Me Why. The songs on the A side were more commercial and served the movie well. Side 2 showcases more experimental instincts. These include Anytime at All, I'll Cry Instead, Things We Said Today, When I Get Home, You Can't Do That, and I'll Be Back. This group of songs are generally more somber and hint at the Beatles' maturity in dealing with the subject of love. A Hard Day's Night was released on July 10, 1964, 4 days after the movie premiere. It was the Beatles' first album composed entirely of original material, and their only release that consisted solely of songs written by John and Paul. It was also recorded entirely on 4-track machines. By the end of 1964, the album sold 600,000 copies in the UK. In the US, it sold over 1 million advance copies and another million within the first 3 months. It remains one of the fastest-selling albums of all time. In November 1964, the Beatles released 2 singles. The first, I Feel Fine, is notable for its use of feedback in the first note, a low A on Paul's bass. John claims that they were the first to use feedback on a record. Because this violated Parlophone's recording policies, they said at the time that it was only a mistake, though it was clearly intentional since it appeared in every take. The second single was She's a Woman. The Beatles' 4th album, Beatles for Sale, was released on December 4th, 1964. By this point, the Beatles were exhausted from their demanding schedule, and this album generally reflects their tiredness. The Beatles struggled to find creativity. On this album, they returned to recording covers, 6 in total: Rock and Roll Music, Mr. Moonlight, Kansas City Hey 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 Hey, Words of Love, Honey Don't, and Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby. The album opens strongly, however, with No Reply. John's voice immediately enters, telling an unhappy story of betrayal and jealousy. John's cries when he sings I Saw the Light and I Nearly Died are extremely effective, and Paul's high harmony in the bridge is invigorating. I'll Follow the Sun was one of the earliest songs Paul wrote when he was only 16. It was revived for this album because the Beatles were desperate for material. The pleasant, beautiful melody is deceiving. It's actually another heavy-hearted song, this time about walking away from a relationship, following the sun rather than withstanding the rainy season. The most popular song on the album is 8 Days a Week. While writing to a songwriting session with John, Paul asked his chauffeur how he was doing, to which the driver replied with, "Oh, working hard, working 8 days a week." As soon as Paul arrived at John's house, they immediately worked on this song together. It was the first pop song to begin with a fade-in. The medium tempo feels comfortable. The 3-part harmonies blend well, and John's acoustic guitar takes lead over George's electric guitar, which was unconventional for the Beatles up to this point. The other original songs on the album are I'm a Loser, Babies in Black, Every Little Thing, Don't Want to Spoil the Party, and What You're Doing. By its release date, Beatles for Sale had 750,000 pre-orders, the most ever received for an album. It replaced A Hard Day's Night at the top of the charts and remained there for 11 non-consecutive weeks. It may not be their most impressive album, but they rebounded very quickly. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Next time we'll discuss the Beatles' 5th and 6th studio albums. We'll also take a close look at the second movement of Beethoven's Mass in C, the Gloria. I hope you'll join me. Bye for now!